World-renowned human performance expert, executive coach, best-selling author.
And I want to congratulate Ron Kardashian.
Over 12,000 hours of one-on-one coaching and mentorship.
He's a health and cognitive expert.
Known as a spiritual confidant to respected industry leaders. CEO of 3 companies.
Coach and minister Ron Kardashian.
Good friend, Coach Ron Kardashian.
Hello, everyone. Tim Boyko here with Always Winning in Leadership. And for this March, as all of you know, is Women's Empowerment Month. And we have a great topic lined up for you, the power of a woman under attack. Here I have with me Coach Ron Kardashian. Take it away, Coach.
Thank you, Tim. Really glad to be with you guys today. Let me turn on this camera. All right, here we go. This is a really powerful subject, so I want to lay this right because if I don't frame this right, some people look at this through a different lens of violence, which I'm not a proponent of. But the idea is that pressure, um, it relieves and reveals authority. It's one of the most recognizable patterns in history. As we look, Rosa Parks, of course, is on the top of my notes here. Now, I have 2 cameras going on here, so if I'm not looking at you, I'm either looking at my notes or I'm looking at this camera. But Tim, this is a powerful, powerful subject because of all the women that I've coached in corporate America, including my own wife, who I haven't coached. Actually, she's my coach. Um, Adversity awakens the greatest strength inside these women. And my own personal belief is I'm an advocate of women. I believe that women are the most powerful force on the earth. I mean, they're the only species on the earth, the female race, that's able to produce seed right in their body, create life. And that recognizing that attribute alone from a level of procreation is the most beautiful thing in the world. So I want to salute all of our women. It's Women Empowerment Month. And I want to talk about why adversity often awakens the greatest strength inside a woman. And when you're under attack, recognizing women whose influence emerged through authority and through adversity is something honorable. Rosa Parks, for example, when she refused to surrender her seat on the bus in 1955. She was arrested and threatened. But what followed was the Montgomery bus boycott. And as I analyze this, I think this ignited the modern civil rights movement. And her quiet resistance became a symbol of courage worldwide. So I want to give some encouragement to you if you've been belittled on the job, if you've been not promoted, or maybe a man was promoted over you and you were rocking it. I want you to I'm going to give you some insights today on how you can flip this. I don't usually mention Oprah, but I do commend people on their achievements, and I think we're a culture that needs to start doing more of this. That instead of looking at what people are doing wrong, let's look at what they're doing right. We're all weak. We all have our own weaknesses. But here, this Oprah was a woman who was absolutely raised in poverty. She survived childhood abuse and then faced repeated rejection. Now, I want you to write this down at the top of your notes for all my beautiful women. And if you're a man, you're going to learn something from this too, because it's going to give you a deeper sensitivity and respect for women. And this is something that I think a lot of us men, including me, so I'm not pointing you out, that we need to talk about so that we're more empathetic, not necessarily compassionate, because we don't know what these, beautiful women have gone through. Some of us can identify, but empathy is that I can understand that pain and identify with something else inside me that would produce an empathetic response instead of a crassness or an evasiveness, or what I like to use the word is incoherency. Because being coherent to the needs of others, whether they're men or women, is a behavioral trait of greatness. And when you master that trait, you automatically induce respect. This woman, Oprah, she faced repeated rejection. So, what I want you to write down is a rejection, cross it out immediately. A rejection, cross it out, equals redirection. So from here on out, The way that you look at rejection is complete redirection. That's it. And that's the inevitability of success. That success, as I coach teams, I coach people, coach little league, coach football with my children, um, is that the success is getting rid of the mentality of losing in general. And we replace that with one of our tools we use here at our coaching facilities and with our clients is the CR tool, cognitive replacement. And in essence, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, the word rejection, I'm going to replace that word with redirection. What happens to the neural pathways is they begin to rewire and refire so that when you do face rejection, immediately the thought hits, oh, I'm being redirected. You're either winning in life or you're learning. No more losing. It's inevitable that you are going to face battles. Specifically for Oprah, she built one of the most influential media empires in history, and she completely reshaped conversations around healing, emotional intelligence, and personal growth. And so that is commendable. Where'd she start? Complete rejection. Early in broadcasting, you can look at that. I even quoted Serena Williams kind of in a auspicious way in my first book, getting 30-second solution, where I was talking about how 30-second decisions can make or break your life. I live right here by a intersection where I think I told you about this, Tim. There's a monument, like a memorial set up right on the street corner. It's got a cross, and there are fresh flowers being brought out every day. And the man was taking his little girl to school, the man who had died. He was taking his little girl to school in the morning. Well, a gentleman decided to impulsively, incoherently, reactionarily jump out of incoming traffic and plow through the red light. He killed the father on impact as the little girl was leading the pack of the bicycles. And he was next in line and was killed on impact. That 30-second decision, ladies and gentlemen, that man made to run the red light cost him 30-year life sentences. 3. He's not getting out of jail, and that little girl no longer has a father. How has that reshaped that little girl's life? Power of a woman under attack and the power of decisions. Serena Williams, endured years of criticism, racial bias, body shaming through her career. And athletes aren't thin people. They don't look like runway models. I'm an athlete. We're never going to be we're more muscular people, and getting comfortable with that as a woman, you own that, girl, as I like to say. You own your shape, you own your figure, you carry yourselves in a disposition. And we do disposition coaching, uh, talking about proper attire, what to wear, how to dress. If you're plus size, that has nothing to do with acceptance. It's everything to do with neural wiring. We don't care what people think about us in that regard. It's how we think about ourselves that shapes us. She became one of the greatest athletes in sports history. I think it was 23, wasn't it? 23 grand slams, Gina? Something like that, redefining strength in women's athletics. I mean, as a strength and conditioning coach, I salute Serena Williams. Let's get her this video. I almost bought her G-Wagon, by the way. I don't know if I told you that. No, but I ended up buying it. Wrong color contrast. Deborah in the Bible is probably one of my favorites ones. If you haven't read the Bible, pick it up. We're getting closer to the culmination of time. If you're in business, there are 2 books that I recommend reading. Whoops. Can you get this light? This light is flashing again. Maybe unplug it, plug it in. China lights. Um, um, Deborah, if you haven't gotten the Bible, pick it up. 2 books I'm constantly reading. One is the book of Psalms. Yeah, that's fine. And 2 is the book of Proverbs. Proverbs gives you insight to other people, business relationships, insights, wisdom. And then Psalms is for yourself. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, all that is within me. So you're cultivating a new rhythm inside you that's building a security that self-improvement systems cannot offer. And this is why my programs are so powerful, because I don't coach from a top-down approach. I coach from an up-under approach. Heart to brain has more influence. Now, Deborah was powerful in this because she was a woman submitted to God's agenda, not in religion, in relationship. And she rose to leadership during a time when Israel was really oppressed, time of war, time of transformation. Think about the times we're in now. At the time of this recording, we've got missiles flying all over the Middle East. All right. So rather than retreating, she became a judge. Think about this. Think about in your career that if you're working a 9 to 5 right now and all of a sudden you decided to go to law school, she became a prophetic voice. She became a military leader. And then she guided the nation into victory. You can look that up in Judges chapter 4 and verse 5. So let's talk about emotional intelligence, because I want to give you women just an encouraging word about, and research bound, not just from Coach Ron. Research continuously, repetitively shows, all the way from Harvard, Oxford, all the way down to JV universities, that women have this biological and neurological advantage in emotional perception and empathy. And I think this is powerful, Tim, because Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and the Harvard Business School indicated that women score higher in empathy and emotional perception. So think about the word perception, that you're perceiving certain things in business, in your career, with your family, with your life. If you have voices around you suppressing that, you got to slowly move them out. It's called your sphere of influence. Teams led by emotionally intelligent leaders, they showed about a 20 to 30% higher performance outcome. 20 to 30 women. And then companies with greater gender diversity, which is something we're always advocating for, 25% increase. 25% increase in profitability. So my favorite one is Stanford, because I'm here in the Silicon Valley, and Stanford is right here. I do my cardio there whenever I get a chance. Ride through those beautiful hills out there. If you've never been to California, you should just come and tour Stanford's campus and hang out in Palo Alto, where Facebook was founded, and Instagram is out here. A bunch of the Fortune 500 companies are right here. The environment in itself is electric. Stanford said that stronger cross communication skills between emotional and analytical brain regions happen in women faster, stronger, more powerfully. So, women, I want you to start conditioning yourself with understanding. Wow, Coach brings up a good point here. I don't give myself enough credit. And this connection helps explain why many women demonstrate strong abilities in certain categories, like reading emotional cues, the rolling of the eyes, body language. Body language is so powerful that we as human beings pick it up almost 80% more than verbal response. I forget what that study is. It'd be cool if you can grab that study, Gina. How much of people respond to my body language versus what I say, right? Um, the connection for women's communication between emotional analytical brain regions, we have two sectors. I won't get into the science, but it's the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. And the sympathetic is playing on the brakes. That's the fight, flight, freeze. The parasympathetic is the gas, right? It's the flow, it's peace, it's serenity, it's on point, your A game. And you want to stay in parasympathetic. This is why we coach this. It's not just motivational fluff. This is actual medical science. Now, maintaining relational stability is another one of those congruent elements. Navigating conflict. If you have had trouble navigating conflict, there's one exercise I want you to do right now, here live as we're going and teaching this. Deep breath into your heart and then activate it with something you're grateful for. You could be grateful for your hair. You can be grateful for your car. You can be grateful for your new linen sheets. It doesn't matter what level of gratitude. Don't get into the superficial side of, as we talked about earlier, does it have to be grandiose? I'm grateful for my children. Well, obviously, but let it titrate. Let it trickle down into that area of the heart cavity where, you may have gotten a new dress and you're like, oh, I love this dress. And right at that moment, the neurosynapses, they don't discriminate on what you love versus what you like or what's material or not. This is why material possessions can be so detrimental, because you could fall in love with those things more than you love your spouse, seriously. But I want to use this in a positive way. Deep gratitude, deep breathe into your heart and say, I'm going to navigate this the right way. I have got an edge. I've got 20 to 30% higher performance. Now, I'm not saying this so you can go into work and start strutting your stuff. In fact, the more knowledge you have, actually, the more humble you become. Humility precedes honor, ladies. And even if you're being pushed around, sometimes that comes off as protection. You say, Coach, but you don't know how I'm treated at the office. Well, you'd be surprised. I had to put a bunch of male CEOs in check, saying, what gives you the authority and right to speak down to that woman? The superiority complex is very apparent in a lot of corporations. You'd think we were in the 1940s here. You would think that men would have evolved. We also see it with women, though. Women can be very domineering and very authoritative and very controlling, very abusive. So I'm not taking sides here, men. But I am advocating for women empowerment one just today to focus on you as a woman who's gaining new insight into herself. And these skills are now recognizable as core leadership competencies. We're assessing the brains of these women. And if you've never done any analytics for your brain heart connection, I think that's what the difference is. This is not a personality test. This is a heart activation test. Now, what the study shows, the heart, that's why I said breathe into the heart, is the heart has more impact on the brain than the brain has on the heart. Google it. Heart study, 40,000 neuron connection. All right. Let's talk about a little bit throughout history whenever a woman has been pushed into the fire of adversity. Something extraordinary has emerged. And it's not weakness, it's authority. Authority must never be misconstrued for superiority. In other words, if you're in a position of authority, don't use that as an abusive state to control. And I'm writing a new book called The Mind of Christ right now. It's a neurotheological dissertation on one of the most emotionally regulated leaders in the history of the world. When you're starting to have a POV at a higher dimension, you optimize your performance. Cultural resistance often precedes female breakthroughs. Write it down, ladies. You start getting resistance, you're about to have a breakthrough. Remember, I'm switching the brain off of the attack mode, sympathetic, into the breakthrough mode, parasympathetic. And when you enter that, woman, my precious lady, you enter into a place of complete breakthrough. Here, because adversity activates resilience. If you think about it in the weight room, this is how I want you to calm your nervous system when you are hated, lied to, discriminated against, any of those facets, which I am completely understanding with. I've faced discrimination myself for my last name. They throw me into a bucket. It's a form of discrimination. You don't even know me, but you're judging me by my last name? Judging someone by the color of their skin? Foolishness, complete foolishness. So we're going to take that energy, we're going to flip it. Because history shows women frequently rise when society attempts to silence them. And that's what happened to me. It happened to a lot of great physicians I talked to. Dr. Amen, who, endorsed my first book, I was on the phone with him and I told him about, a time when I had so many death threats, we had to hire private protection for my children. We had to take them out of school. It was a very scary time. I went into PTSD deeply, afraid to go outside, afraid you're going to be killed, shot, whatever it is, had to travel with executive protection. I don't have to now. POV had to change. I needed to get some help for this. If you've been attacked at that level and you've been traumatized, that's real. And don't try to just overcome it. Get some help for it. Get some coaching around it. Get some therapy around it. I did. And I actually talked to Dr. Amen about that. And he said to me, I spent the entire decades in seclusion because of the attack I was under. Greatness. Now look at him now, one of the biggest in the world. From a psychological level, taught me a lot. That one conversation, one 30-second conversation can absolutely change the trajectory of your whole life when you're with someone who is deeply sincere. And that's why I advocate for women in authority. Use your pain as a moment to push, not pressure. Because, Rosa Parks, she pushed. There was pressure there, but she was always a lady. Deborah in the Bible, same thing. So, let's explain the science as we wrap up, because this is pretty cool. Emotional intelligence is a big word around Lee Confidant, my private coaching practice. And it's now considered the top leadership predictor. We've added to it. It's not only EQ. You got to have the IQ, which is your intelligence in general. And that comes through learning, praying, developing, studying. Study to show yourself approved. Study. It's not just scrolling through a bunch of little, social posts, getting a self-help video. Open up concordances, open up the dictionary, open up a thesaurus, get word exchanges, because women tend to demonstrate stronger emotional awareness and empathy as they get insight, not just education. The education will lead you to insight. Vision causes you to see at great lengths, ladies, but insight will cause you to see around corners. That's that discernment. What do you mean around corners, coach? What are you talking? Well, let me talk to you about the inner study that was done by women who were raped. They all had a premonition, at least the study. Let's not say all, let's say 90%. All had a premonition something bad was going to happen. Why? The GI tract started moving. The intestinal tract has just as many neurons that the brain does. Now, you seeing the parallel with the inner gut and the heart? We've been taught therapeutically, let's renew the mind, but the mind in the Hebrew and Greek early establishment of renewal started with a connection to the heart. Early Hebraic development, children of Israel, we have all these stories of evolution, proven, historical, archaeologically verified. They would feel this pulse in their chest when they would be afraid. They didn't have understanding of cognition, neural pathways, synaptic connections as we now have. But what they did has they had a pulse. They knew when they were attacked, how it felt. They knew when they were in love, how the heart felt. You remember that feeling. If you haven't had that feeling, you got to experience that. It's unbelievable. The heart literally feels warm. It's like anybody who's ever been in love, you can probably get this feeling from your children that it's such an amazing feeling. Now, we can take that same feeling for career. You ever heard the saying, go with your heart, or the person is all heart? Well, out of the abundance of the heart, you know, theologically, the mouth does speak. So if the heart is filled with pain from the persecution under the attack, you take that and you channel it and cultivate it. And the heart begins to process these pathways that give you an edge that makes you unstoppable. That's what's called emotional regulation. And it creates stronger teams and cultures. Research insight from Harvard Business School showed leaders with high emotional intelligence generate greater employee engagement and loyalty. Why? Because they're engaged. So, engagement, ladies. Leadership today is not just about authority, it's about emotional influence. It's about regulation. It's about temperance. And it's about vulnerability. You want to be a powerful leader? Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Dr. Amen taught me that. He said, don't, he immediately said, well, guess what? I too was under attack. When you hear someone in prominent authority talk about their own liabilities, their own weaknesses, it gives them something to relate to because that pressure has awoken a purpose in us, right? The psychological dynamic, so let me just name my list. Adversity forces identity clarity. Was I what people said I was? Zero. No. Did it give me more courage? Eventually, yeah, I had to fight my fear. You got to go back outside sometime. And it also created a new tone in my voice where, maybe some of those things that the haters were saying were true. I was an addict. Oh, this guy's an addict. This guy's this. I was. This guy's a jerk. Okay, you're right. I was. Let's admit it and move on. I mean, who of us hasn't been a jerk at one time? Get rid of that word jerk. I can't stand that. Anytime, mainly women call guys jerks, but it's such a horrible word. But God, we would never want to be a jerk. How do you call them that? It's emotional regulation, right? Pressure reveals purpose. It opened me up to even be more articulate and sensitive to my viewers, right? So I'm gonna give you some encouragement today, women. If you're facing criticism, if you're facing workplace resistance, if you're facing family pressure, cultural expectation, the adversity your experience may be just preparing your authority. Your voice matters. This is not just a black saying, it is the saying. And your emotional strength is a leadership gift. You have a fingerprint and a DNA nobody else can compare to. And the opposition you face may be confirming your influence. There is a power behind a woman who's been under attack. And never forget the concept of the weight room whenever you get exhausted, that it's under the weights that we put on the body to shape your beautiful arms and your hips and your midsection, that resistance is actually making you stronger. But you got to reframe it right. This is where coaching comes in, or partnerships, or therapy, or your priest, or your rabbi, or bounce things off people, because that gives you a sharpening that makes you unstoppable. The world often misreads emotional intelligence as weakness, but history will tell us different. The women who changed the world were not the ones who avoided pressure. They were the ones who transformed it. Be a transformist today. Throughout history, the most powerful women in the world were those who lived without adversity and had adversity and embraced adversity, all three sectors. They were the ones who faced resistance, but they discovered that the very pressure meant to silence them became the force that revealed their authority. So if you're a woman walking through adversity today, understand this: pressure doesn't diminish your strength, it often reveals it. Let it do the ultimate revealing, and you watch how the end of this year opens up. Tim, thanks so much for always hosting us. I appreciate you coming on board and encouraging me to really stand for justice, love, and nonviolence, because it's a powerful tool.
Thanks. This is a great topic. I mean, pressure reveals purpose. Love this. And you look throughout history, how many women, their purpose was revealed under great pressure when they were under attack. So love this
Yeah.
message.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody, I'm Coach Ron Kardashian. This is why we're always winning in leadership, where we rewire, refire to go higher.